This and that and what the fuck else, episode 125. In this episode I'll be talking a bit about Russia, Ukraine, the US, some stories on weapons, actually quite a few stories on weapons. Because weapons is all over this lately. And a what the fuck that will make you shake your head and say, what the fuck is that? Things are a bit busy here in South Africa. I am more and more convinced that Eskom is going to pull this ANC government down. What you are seeing now, lately, is panic. And for a long time in my life, I trained guys to take their ski boats through the surf on the Zululand coast. Now that's a hairy experience. You can ask any fisherman that knows the Zulu. And the first thing that I hammered into those skippers' heads is whatever you do, don't panic. Because if you panic, you will fuck up. That is the reality. And what I see in the ANC the past 4 or 5 days is signs of panic. Because the people has had it. And for the first time they are angry, and their anger is pointed at the real culprits, the ANC, not apartheid and whites. And what happened today in Parliament, when the writer and the Eskom board had to face that committee, the things that were said there was actually hilarious. That Eskom had to get a private donator to do the intelligence gathering on the corruption running rampant in that organization. And when they handed the information over to the official or to the authorities, nothing happened. How's that? Corruption is rife, but I think the corruption is what's going to bring them down. I don't think the ANC is going to survive this. They've lost physical control over the country a long time ago, and now the people are angry enough. But let's see what happens. We're going to start off with a photograph. This is a photograph that would usually be entered in either the boudoir section or glamour or even portraits. I like the image, and it's one of my favorite crops, a square crop. By now you know I like a square crop. The model is placed very well in that crop, and I like the shot. For me, it would get an 8. The lighting is a bit on the dull side. And then we get to Russia, and specifically Putin, and I am laughing because look at this. The Western media reports every week that Vladimir has some kind of terminal illness. Meanwhile, this week Putin enjoyed the traditional Epiphany ice bathing. How's that? And here's one more on the same topic. He has 500 terminal cancers. His liver, kidneys and lungs are missing, but he is still doing well. And I have to laugh because the Western media has tied themselves in so many knots with Putin that it is just not funny anymore. And then something on the sanctions. The EU is working on the 10th round of Russia sanctions. EU working on 10th package of anti-Russia sanctions to take effect next month. Nuclear fuel cooperation with Moscow, imports of Russian diamonds and trade with Belarus may be targeted. What the hell is wrong with those people? And just before I started recording, I read an article. Hungary had said there's no way they will support this because they run nuclear power stations that use Russian nuclear fuel. And I think they're going to run into shit with Belgium as well, because Belgium is the biggest diamond trading operation block in the world. And they will not fall for this sanctions on the Russian diamonds. Those people are crazy. They are totally off their rockers. They are burning their fingers like Europe's economy is in tatters, I say. In tatters. But they carry on. And this weapons thing is sickening and nauseating at the same time. And then we get to the Ukraine. The equalizer reckons, I absolutely cannot understand how anyone can believe anything at all from the constantly lying Ukrainian government. It's almost like self-hypnosis. And look at that cartoon, a rocket there with the Ukrainian flag on. Biden says, Russia, you said. And Zelensky, with a long nose, sir, please. And then there's this one. Today I don't quite understand with whom to talk and what to talk about. I'm not sure that the president of Russia, who sometimes appears on the chroma key, is he? I don't quite understand that he is alive. Whether he makes decisions or someone makes decisions, said the king of chroma makery. And this is at the same time for my Nazi stalker. This is how your hero Zelensky visited Bakhmut. Here, that's how he did it, on a green screen. Now this one is also for my Nazi stalker. The land that God left. At all times, in times of wars, in times of terrible turmoil, the church was a place of refuge for people where everyone could find protection, shelter and asylum. The German Nazis drove people into churches and exterminated them during World War II. But the Ukrainian neo-Nazis surpassed their teachers. They abolished Christianity in Ukraine. So my Nazi stalker, how do you like that? That's your heroes in operation. And then you have this. For some war is war, for others it is a dear mother-in-law. In Ukraine, they tried to resell 7 tons of food products intended for the armed forces of Ukraine. Rogov told about fraud in the supply of food to the armed forces. These guys had a roaring business in stealing the donated food and selling it on. It's donated food, they steal it and then they sell it to the army. But I see today a lot of fairly high-level officials in Kiev has resigned. I think that cookie is crumbling. And then, something more for my Nazi stalker. This is what Ukraine do to the churches. Another church of Moscow Patriarchate goes on fire. Borispol district near Kiev. And then we have this, that appears on Joe Rogan. USA crime statistics. 2015. Blacks killed by whites, 2%. Blacks killed by police, 1%. Whites killed by police, 3%. Whites killed by whites, 16%. Whites killed by blacks, 81%. Blacks killed by blacks, 97%. I wonder why. And then we have this. The Texas state senator calls for food made from aborted fetuses to be labeled, even though they don't exist. The bill would also relate to vaccines and cosmetic products. The bill has been introduced in the Texas legislature to make the labeling of products that contains tissue from aborted babies mandatory. Guys, what the fuck is going on there in America? And then we get to this. This is the women that are in charge of the sanctions, the monetary sanctions, and the stealing of the Russian assets. foreign assets. US Treasury Secretary Yellen accuses Russia of causing misery in Africa, citing conflict in Ukraine. Says Moscow's weaponization of food has increased food insecurity. Does she think we don't read other news sources? They are telling the Africans that they're not allowed to buy from Russia. If they do, they will be sanctioned. And then she comes and talks shit like this. I am so fed up and sick for the fucking Americans. I cannot express it harsher. And then you get this craziness. Yes, across the Russian store, a Putin fascist, Hitler rag. Cringe of the week. The attack of the crazy Ukro granny. Somewhere in the USA, a Ukrainian saw a gathering of Russians and had a meltdown. Koja, the Russians are here. The KGB, Putin for the holy American flag. Phone the police. Putin wants to turn America to dirt. People has lost their minds. They're fucking crazy. Then we have this. Today they are scaring the world with us. Allegedly, we are going to use nuclear weapons. Who is talking about this? Americans. Those who were first and only in the world to use an atomic bomb to bomb Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The number of victims, including the delayed effects of the explosion, exceeded 200,000 people. And from 1962 to 71, the Americans sprayed 77 million liters of synthetic chemical agent orange on Vietnam. Mangrove forests were almost completely destroyed. 60% of the jungle and 30% of the lowland forest were affected. There are about 4.8 million spray victims in Vietnam. Over 1 million people under the age of 18 became disabled with hereditary diseases. International organizations have not yet recognized this as a crime against humanity. The victims were not compensated. But this is what the Americans do, and the West plays along. And I saw this and I just shook my head. The White House has confirmed that the US Treasury recognizes the Wagner Group as an international criminal organization and will impose sanctions against it. Prigozhin commented on the recognition of Wagner PMC as a terrorist organization. Finally, now Wagner PMC and the Americans are colleagues. Our relationship from now on can be called a showdown of criminal clans, said the head of the paramilitary structure to a request by Reuters. I just have to shake my head. This is what the Americans is doing it all over the world. And now all of a sudden Wagner is a criminal operation. But they can carry on with their sanctions. They are shooting themselves in the foot all the way. And this picture I'm just showing you, this is the factory in Russia that builds the T-90 tanks. And just for the record, the West is scrounging around to try and get 100 tanks together. And they are really scraping the bottom of the barrels to get 100 tanks together to send to Ukraine. I don't know why they don't contact Russia and buy tanks from Russia. Because this Russian factory produces 100 tanks per month. And then there's a lot of stories about that Leopard 2 that will be sent now to Ukraine. I've got some news for them. You see this is a pamphlet that has already been distributed to the Russian soldiers in the Donbass. And it shows them all the target points on those tanks and how to disable them. And the heading of this, coming to a junkyard near you. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak agreed to send a tank squadron to Ukraine, independent reports. The publication reports that 4 main battle tanks, Challenger 2s, will be immediately sent to Eastern Europe, soon to follow 8 more armored vehicles. And I mean, that British army is in tatters. Let's use that word, tatters. It is in tatters. But they give their stuff away. The West are being disarmed at an alarming rate. And this one made me laugh. Pentagon sends US arms stored in Israel to Ukraine. Israeli officials had initially expressed concern that the move could damage its relations with Russia. In any case, they have sent those artillery shells from Israel to Ukraine, and I'm just asking myself, what is going to happen in the Middle East if Iran decides going to move? And this was very disturbing to me. The US warms to helping Ukraine target Crimea. The Biden administration is considering the argument that Kiev needs the power to strike at the Ukrainian peninsula annexed by Russia in 2014. Now, the Americans keep on saying they're not involved in the war, but this is what they're doing. And if they give the Ukrainians the stuff that they can shoot into Crimea and shoot deep into Russia, I wonder what the Russian response will be. Medvedev has said already a while back that the Americans must just remember, if they provide the equipment to shoot into Russia, the Russians will go after the command and control centers. And where are those command and control centers? In Poland. And this is just a better version of that same message. US warms to helping Ukraine target Crimea. I don't know. And then we have this. The New York Times reported that the United States is inclined to transfer weapons to Ukraine for strikes on Crimea. After months of discussion with Ukrainian officials, the Joe Biden administration began to agree that Kiev might need to force to strike on the peninsula, even if such a move increases the risk of escalation, US officials said after months of discussion with Ukrainian officials. They just don't learn. These Americans do not learn. As noted, the position of the US administration changed when they came to the conclusion that if Ukrainian military can show Russia that its control over Crimea may be under threat, this will strengthen the position of Kiev in any future negotiations. In addition, Washington's fears that the Kremlin will strike back with tactical nuclear weapons have eased, the sources said, but the risk remains. I don't know where this is going to. But it's going to turn out bad for the West, that I can assure you. The US to send hundreds of armored vehicles and rockets to Ukraine. The United States said on Thursday it would send hundreds of armed vehicles plus rockets and artillery shells to Ukraine as part of the $2.5 billion military assistance package. The package includes 59 Bradley fighting vehicles, 90 Stryker armored personnel carriers, 53 mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles, and 350 high-mobility multi-purpose wheeled vehicles, the US Defense Department said in a statement. Well, I've heard lots of stories about that Bradley. Let's see how that works out. You ask me, it's more scrap metal. Ukrainian forces fire between 4,000 and 7,000 of these shells per day, according to the American officials interviewed by CNN. Estimates of Russians' fire have varied hugely, from anywhere between 5,000 and 60,000 artillery rounds per day. Ukraine's artillery disadvantage is compounded by the fact that its Western-donated guns, the German-made Panzerhaubitze 2000 and the American M777 howitzer, were never designed for such sustained rates of fire and are plagued by battlefield breakdowns. Yeah, well, that's how it works. But they keep on sending. They just keep on. Their own citizens are really struggling, but they've got billions to pour into the Ukraine. And then we get to that what the fuck. And you really have to look at this, listen, and say, what the fuck is this? I started dating a sex doll after my fiancé left me. I even introduced her to my mum. And now to the important world news. I started dating a sex doll after my fiancé left me. I even introduced her to my mum. What the hell is that? What? People has lost their minds. In any case, on that crazy note, please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. And thank you for your support.